Welcome to the Alaska Weather Show. I'm meteorologist Peter Chan here at the National Weather Service. Welcome aboard on this Saturday evening, October 23rd, 2021. And if you would like additional weather information, you can go to weather.gov/Alaska. Or if you prefer the old-fashioned method, forecast phone line is 1-800-472-0391. And you can reach me if you have any questions or if you have anything interesting reports or photos to share at peter.chan@noaa.gov. Well, in the weather headlines, we have a weakening, lingering area of low pressure in the Gulf. This was once the powerhouse hurricane-force wind-producing storm that rolled through the Aleutians and the tip of the Alaska Peninsula on Thursday and Friday, producing wind gusts over 130 miles per hour. We have another low-pressure system that'll be crossing through the Aleutians now through Sunday night, but that'll be producing primarily storm-force winds, so it will not be quite as intense. And then we're going to see areas of light snow increasing along the west and north coast, as well as the central interior. An area of low pressure will be forming out around the Seward Peninsula, Kotzebue Sound area, and that's going to enhance any snow showers that are there now into some areas of snow. Overall, though, we're not going to see much change in the weather pattern. Generally below normal temperatures are anticipated to close out the month and begin November across much of the state, especially the south and west, with above normal precipitation expected south central areas on into the panhandle. So let's take a look. Dutch Harbor, this is the scene today. Winds are only gusting up around 30 knots, so let's say up around 35 miles an hour. Some breaks and a few scattered light showers. Tremendous improvement there after the storm that rolled through Thursday and Friday. And off to the north, Savunga there on St. Lawrence Island. Winds have been out of the north, and that has caused some elevated surf there on the north side of St. Lawrence Island, but otherwise just some passing light snow showers or flurries there in the forecast. The light snows may enhance a bit here as that low develops over the Seward Peninsula. Winds tonight, strongest winds are out over North Pacific, and that's to the southeast of Sand Point, but you can see those stronger winds just to the west and southwest of Adak. Those storm force winds will be rolling through the central Aleutians as we head through the day tomorrow. By Sunday morning, Adak will be in some storm force winds, and those winds will continue working their way eastward as that low pressure system there on the Pacific side, the North Pacific side of the Aleutians, works its way eastward. Otherwise, statewide winds overall have come down quite a bit. Continue to see north and northwest winds along the northwest coast and western coast from Point Lay all the way down to areas around Nunavik Island. That'll keep the snow showers going too as that colder air just seeps southward. And then by Sunday afternoon, you see strongest winds are between Adak and Dutch Harbor, and that storm will continue its eastward projection as we go into Sunday night and Monday. So on the satellite imagery, you can see the curl in the clouds. There's a double barrel low pressure system now in the western Gulf. One center is just to the southeast of the Kenai Peninsula, another one southeast of Kodiak, and that system will gradually be weakening. There's actually a stronger low further south and east in the North Pacific, west of the Pacific Northwest continental United States. That has a central pressure down around 945 millibars. And then back to the north, extensive cloud cover along the west coast up through the strait and on up to along the northwest coast, where there are snow showers and areas of light snow that, as I mentioned, will be increasing as we head through the remainder of this weekend and on into Monday. So let's look at, there's that double barrel low. It's come up to 970 millibars, and it will continue to fill here as we head through the overnight and tomorrow. Area of high pressure out there in northwest Canada and toward the Yukon, Northwest Territories. There are some breaks in the clouds across the state, but overall we're watching the two systems, the weakening low in the Gulf and then the next low that's going to be working its way across the North Pacific side there of the Aleutians. And then we expect a reflection of another low developing up there on the Seward Peninsula, Kotzebue Sound, and that system is going to persist through the day Sunday into Sunday night. That's going to allow areas of light snow to become more widespread along the Alaska Range and up through the central interior along the Yukon Valley. And as I said, the low, as it works its way eastward, will emerge out in just south of the Gulf on Monday. So that'll just keep, this time of year, it's very easy for low pressure to develop in the relatively milder waters of the Gulf and then linger. Same case up there along the northwest coast. We'll see low pressure lingering there. Low temperatures tonight, generally mid-30s across the panhandle, and where there is some clearing, there could be some patchy fog form, especially around St. Petersburg, but also in the vicinity of Juneau, Klawak, and Ketchikan. Back toward the west, temperatures should generally remain above freezing, say around Cordova as well as Anchorage, but areas that do see any breaks in the clouds will easily dip down into the 20s, and then high temperatures for Sunday afternoon will generally be in the 40s across much of the area, exception there like Glen Allen, 34, and on the west side of the Alaska Range, or at other areas like McGrath. But taking a look at Monday morning lows, could get down around or a bit below freezing there in the Panhandle, the inner waterways, and then also across much of the south central interior. And then temperatures Monday afternoon could reach lower 50s there at Ketchikan and over toward Craig. And then as we look at across the south central interior, highs 30s to lower 40s at best. Coastal areas could still manage, say, some lower mid 40s. And then across the north, temperatures overnight teens and 20s for lows. Highs temperatures will generally below freezing north of the Yukon River, and a little above freezing between the Alaska Range and the Yukon River. And then as we go into Monday morning, look for lows widespread into the teens along the Brooks Range and North Slope. And areas along the Yukon River will also be getting down into the 20s, some of the east central areas near the Alaska Range in the teens. And high temperatures generally mid-20s to lower 30s across much of the region, with areas of light snow Monday morning and Monday afternoon. Across the southwest, the interior, we'll see highs or lows Sunday morning below freezing in the 20s, and then as we get into Sunday afternoon, only around or a tad above freezing at Bethel and Aniak, 34 there at Eamonnok, and then extending out along the Alaska Peninsula, upper 30s to near 40s, some 40s there in the central Aleutians at Adak. And then we are looking for Monday morning lows below freezing in the 20s across the southwest interior, and low temperatures generally above freezing as you get out along the Alaska Peninsula, especially from King Salmon west and southwestward. And then Monday afternoon highs will generally only be near or just below freezing there, the Yukon and the Kuskokwim River basins, but back up into the lower 40s along the Alaska Peninsula and the Aleutians. And we're going to take a check now at the temperature outlook for October 29th through November 2nd. So that's centered on Halloween, Sunday the 31st. Expecting temperatures to average a bit below normal in the Panhandle as well as the west side of the state, especially the Seward Peninsula and the YK Delta. And then precipitation very well could average above normal Cook Inlet as we head in through that time frame. So that means we'll likely see additional rain and snow especially in the mountains, and it could be, depending on storm track, in coastal areas as well.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Well, if you're planning a flight Sunday into Monday, now it's time for your aviation weather. We're going to start out Sunday morning. Areas of IFR, especially north of the Alaska Range up through the Yukon Valley, as well as the North Slope and Arctic Northwest Coast. Little pocket down at the head of the southwest Alaska Peninsula, and then back out through the western half of the Aleutians. Low pressure that will be riding just south of the Aleutians will be the main weather player. Not nearly as strong as the hurricane force low we had on Thursday and Friday, but that system will be working its way across the central into the eastern Aleutians Sunday afternoon. Still lingering low pressure out through the Gulf could keep some areas of IFR going there, and then along north of the Alaska Range to about the Yukon River, and especially up along the Arctic coast back through the northwest at lower Chukchi, the area of low pressure over the lower Chukchi, Kotzebue Sound area will deepen a little bit and keep areas of light snow going there. By Monday morning, widespread IFR conditions across the eastern half of the interior and much of central areas along the Arctic coast back up down toward the Seward Peninsula. and then continuing out over the Gulf and North Pacific. And by Monday afternoon, still rather widespread IFR conditions along the Alcan border, east central areas, northwestward through the North Slope and along the Arctic and Northwest coast, and then out over the open waters of the Gulf. So past conditions on Sunday, AKwx will see MVFR conditions, as will Adigan. And then as we go further south and west, look for MVFR conditions at Lake Clark and Merrill to become IFR as we go through the day on Sunday. And the same thing at Rainy Pass, MVFR conditions will become IFR, as well as at Windy Pass. And Isabel should generally be socked in with IFR conditions on Sunday. Mentasta will see IFR conditions, slightly improved MVFR, and Tanita should be able to hold on to MVFR conditions throughout the day on Sunday, as will Portage Pass. And then in the northern panhandle, Chilkoot and White will see VFR conditions, though any clearing there in the panhandle could lead to some areas of fog very late as we go into Sunday night and Monday morning. That could have some impacts for visibility and ceilings. Taking a look, though, at freezing levels, the freezing level is down to 2,000 feet along the Gulf Coast into the Panhandle. Surface freezing level running along the coastline there of the Gulf and along the southwest coast to off of Nunavik Island and south of St. Lawrence. And then there is a little rise in freezing levels south of the Aleutians associated with that low pressure system that'll be riding through the central and eastern Aleutians on Sunday. Taking a look at icing potential, generally between 7,000 and 14,000 feet over the Gulf, there could be a pocket of moderate icing there just off of the Kenai and especially east-northeast of Kodiak. Another area out there across the Aleutians with that low pressure tracking through that region between 3,000 and 12,000 feet, and then with the low and the lower Chukchi Sea could impact areas especially along coastal areas of the Seward Peninsula between 2,000 and 12,000 feet. The upper level jet stream pattern, while we have strong jet core in excess of 150 knots there, kind of between the Gulf and North Pacific interface and then south of the eastern Aleutians and the Alaska Peninsula. We do see some winds upwards to 60 knots coming ashore at 30,000 feet there in the northern panhandle. South winds out there through the lower Chukchi Sea up to 60 knots, and westerly winds coming onshore into the lower Yukon Delta. Dropping down to 9,000 feet, the primary weather players are the low that is located off to the southwest of Vancouver on the lower left of or right of your screen, and then across the Aleutians there's a circulation at 9,000 feet with winds upwards of 50 and 70 knots south of the Aleutian chain. And as we come down to 3,000 feet, you'll see that the winds there in the Aleutians are stronger at the 3,000 foot level. Turbulence will be an issue, even some low level wind shear and the circulation around that low, especially between the surface and about 3,000 to 5,000 feet. Up there along the Seward Peninsula, Bering Strait, low pressure circulation with winds out of the northeast there in portions of the Bering Strait, and then again some stronger winds south of Haida Gwaii. And there again, the greatest threat for turbulence on Sunday will be across the Aleutian chain, where isolated severe turbulence will be possible, surface to 6,000 feet, along with the possibility of low-level wind shear. So if you are planning a flight, check the latest conditions, and certainly have a safe flight if you can get out.
Floating hundreds of miles from Earth, astronauts get a unique perspective of our planet. While they might recognize landmarks, space is the only place they can see the very edge of our planet's atmosphere.
From orbit, particularly looking at the horizon, did bring to mind how thin the atmosphere is. It's like an onion skin around this great big ball of the Earth.
This uppermost layer of Earth's atmosphere, the ionosphere, also overlaps with the very beginning of space. It's the job of NASA's new mission, GOLD, the Global Scale Observations of the Limmendisk Instrument, to study this region, a region that isn't just for astronauts to explore, but that affects humans every day down on the ground. For one thing, this layer of the upper atmosphere helps protect us from harmful radiation and energy emanating from the sun. But in our modern society, it does so much more. It affects the smartphone that sits in your pocket and the radio waves that guide our airplanes. The ionosphere is a crucial layer of the atmosphere through which our communications and GPS signals travel. and when this region changes, it impacts those communication signals. Changes can occur above this region from the sun's activity, also known as space weather. Changes can also occur below from Earth's weather, such as hurricanes and wind patterns. Gold connects the dots between how space weather and Earth's weather shape the upper reaches of the atmosphere. But this region isn't easy to study. The ionosphere spans roughly 60 to 400 miles from Earth's surface, which is too high for aircraft and scientific balloons, and the lower regions are too low to easily study with satellites. What are attainable, however, are the swaths of red and green light shining out from the upper atmosphere. Formed when the sun's rays hit atmospheric molecules, this light, named airglow, comes from green and red bands of glowing gas. Some of the airglow is invisible to our eyes, shining in infrared and ultraviolet light, which can only be seen with scientific instrumentation. Taking advantage of our planet's natural glow is gold. The gold instrument, which is about the size of a mini-fridge, is hitching a ride on a commercial communication satellite, SES-14. The satellite's orbit lies 22,000 miles above Earth, where it can record images in ultraviolet light to monitor changes in airglow across the globe. These images give information on the temperature, density, and composition of particles in the upper atmosphere. Gold collects these observations faster than any mission has ever done before. It captures an image of Earth's entire disk every 30 minutes, allowing scientists to see how the upper atmosphere evolves throughout the day. Gold joins a host of missions studying the very nature of space around Earth, the Sun, and planets. As NASA ventures farther and farther from home, knowing the nature of space itself is crucial for our journey to understand our solar system and beyond.
There's a new class of chemical compounds impacting the Earth's ozone layer and raising concerns among some scientists. But a new NASA analysis indicates stratospheric ozone could actually be impacted more by climate change and the continued release of already banned chemicals. The Earth's ozone hole is showing signs of recovery, decades after the landmark agreement called the Montreal Protocol that banned many chemical compounds harmful to the ozone layer.
So we know the Montreal Protocol was a huge success. This was signed in the late 1980s when scientists and policymakers from around the world gathered together to try to save the ozone layer.
The chemicals they regulated persist in the atmosphere for many decades. They thin the ozone layer and they create a seasonal hole over Antarctica. They basically take away part of our planet's natural sunscreen, and that increases the risk of skin cancer and damage to plants.
Scientists have projected the ozone hole could disappear almost completely by about 2075, but several factors could delay that recovery.
There are some industrial compounds that are not banned by the Montreal Protocol, but as they enter the atmosphere, they will also hurt the ozone layer.
But the unregulated compounds have a short lifespan in the atmosphere, unlike the chlorofluorocarbons that were originally regulated. So they have a short-lived impact on ozone, and we don't think they'll delay recovery by more than a few years.
We projected by 2050, more than half of the ozone-depleting compounds in the atmosphere will come from long-lived substances banned by the protocol.
Because these compounds stay in the air for such a long time, compared to the unregulated, short-lived compounds, they will have a disproportionate and lingering impact on ozone. So any non-compliance with the protocol can have significant consequences.
And the really big uncertainty in ozone layer recovery is climate change. There are many naturally produced ozone-depleting substances that are emitted by the oceans. And as the oceans continue to warm due to climate change, those emissions will increase, and that will further delay ozone recovery.
Scientists want to better understand how climate change will affect ozone recovery.
This is a hard problem. As a scientific community, we need to work on this major issue. We now have a powerful new tool to simulate atmosphere and its interaction with land and ocean to study this issue. And that's what we're going to do.
How can you see the atmosphere? The answer is blowing in the wind. Tiny particles known as aerosols are carried by the air around the globe. This visualization uses data from NASA satellites combined with our knowledge of physics and meteorology to track 3 aerosols: dust, smoke, and sea salt. Sea salt, shown here in blue, is picked up by winds passing over the ocean. As tropical storms and hurricanes form, the salt particles are concentrated into the spiraling shape we all recognize. With their movements, we can follow the formation of Hurricane Irma and see the dust from the Sahara, shown in tan, get washed out of the storm center by the rain. Advances in computing speed allow scientists to include more details of these physical processes in their simulations of how the aerosols interact with the storm systems. The increased resolution of the computer simulation is apparent in fine details like the hurricane bands spiraling counterclockwise. Computer simulations let us see how different processes fit together and evolve as a system. By using mathematical models to represent nature, we can separate the system into component parts and better understand the underlying physics of each. Today's research improves next year's weather forecasting ability. Hurricane Ophelia was very unusual. It headed northeast, pulling in Saharan dust and smoke from wildfires in Portugal, carrying both to Ireland and the UK. This aerosol interaction was very different from other storms of the season. As computing speed continues to increase, scientists will be able to bring more scientific details into the simulations, giving us a deeper understanding of our home planet.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Well, it's time now for the marine weather. And taking a look at the sea ice edge, we are now in the ice growing season across the Beaufort Sea as well as the Chukchi Sea down into past the strait. We're starting to see some early ice forming even down now into Norton Sound, already taking shape around Kotzebue and then up along the northwest and Arctic coast. And an area of low pressure will be forming right over the Seward Peninsula, Kotzebue Sound area, providing areas of light snow here as we go through the remainder of this weekend and into early next week. Across the southeast, some clearing has occurred, and there could be little areas of some patchy fog to start out daybreak Sunday morning and again on Monday, but otherwise winds will generally be out of the north-northwest around 20 knots, waves still around 4 to 5 feet, maybe as high as 8 feet the south end of the inner waterways. Otherwise, generally north winds along the Gulf Coast and waves running 10 to as high as 15 feet there off of Craig. Monday, look for winds to be kind of a bit more variable, kind of offshore there across the inner waterways at 15 knots, waves a few feet, and then along the Gulf Coast, southeast to east winds 10 knots and waves still running about 8 to 11 feet. On Sunday, we are looking for winds across the south central areas there, the northwestern Gulf Coast to be out of the east, about 15 knots or so. Only 3-footers there in Prince William Sound, but 9-footers there off the Kenai as well as Kodiak, and winds either out of the northeast north or a bit more variable at the mouth of Cook Inlet around 10 knots and waves 2 to 3 feet. On Monday, overall through Cook Inlet and Prince William Sound, winds will be northerly, anywhere from 10 to as high as 20 knots there. And waves generally running a couple of feet in Prince William Sound, but as high as 3 to perhaps 5 or 6 feet there at the mouth of Cook Inlet and off of the coast of the Kenai and northeast of Kodiak. And then on Sunday, the Alaska Peninsula and Kodiak Island winds are going to be out of the north there at Kodiak Island, especially through straits there, 25 knots, waves 4 feet. Still, waters have been churned up by recent storm activity, so waves still 10 to 13 feet on the Pacific side and 8 to 11 feet on the Bering side. By Monday, low pressure will be approaching from the southwest. It'll stay well south of the region, but winds will be out of the north to northwest. 20 to as high as 30 knots on the Pacific side, with waves as high as 18 feet off of Sand Point and as high as 10 feet there north of Cold Bay. And then for Sunday, that Storm force low will be passing just south of the Aleutian chain with winds out of the east, northeast, upwards to 50 knots, and waves 14 to near 20 feet on the North Pacific side, and the Bering side we're looking at winds anywhere from about 10 to 15, as high as 18 feet there north of Atka. On Monday, though, the system already has worked its way to the east. Winds will turn around to the north-northwest on the backside, 30 knots in the eastern Aleutians, falling off below 25 knots to 15 to 20 knots west of Adak. Waves still running 15 to just over 20 feet there on the North Pacific side, and between 10 and 12 feet there on the Bering side. And then across the west coast, winds will be northwest to north, generally around 20 knots, waves 6 to 8 feet. Westerly 15 knots there, 4-footers there in Norton Sound, and then still looking at northwest to north winds around 20 to 25 knots on Monday, with waves 6 to 8 feet in the Bering and 4 feet there in Norton Sound. And across the Arctic coast, winds will be out of the west 10 to 15 knots, Prudhoe Bay to Kaktovik 2 to 4 feet, and then northeast to north down along the lower Chukchi Sea into the strait with waves of 4 to 7 feet. And then on Monday, winds will be out of the east across the Arctic coast and northwest coast 15 to 20 knots. Waves 2 to 3 feet along the Arctic coast, and generally 5 to 8 feet as you drop down through the lower Chukchi Sea and the Bering Strait. Quick check of the weather map. There's that low pressure center passing just south of the Aleutian chain overnight early Sunday with storm force winds. As we get into Sunday afternoon, the low will still be situated there, passing just south of the eastern Aleutians. And then we have weakening low pressure out through the Gulf with a low that's crept upward south of Vancouver Island off the west coast of the continental U.S. And the interior low pressure developing over the Seward Peninsula and Kotzebue Sound, producing areas of light snow that will extend inland across the Alaska Range and the central interior. So that's it for our show tonight. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back again on Sunday.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.